Hi everyone. Today I'm going to tell you about the body language that you should have for MBA interviews. I recently saw that a video on how to introduce yourself for MBA interviews was doing very well on the channel. So I thought probably a couple of you who have your interviews lined up might also require this video specifically. This video has been extracted from the GDPI course that I had created for aspirants this year. In case you would also want to take a couple of mock interviews along with other ways of answering questions, then you can definitely check out the link of that course in the description and the pinned comment. Moving on to the video now. In this section, we are going to talk about the body language that you should have for an interview, and particularly offline interviews first and then online interviews, depending upon which situation plays out to be. So, the first requirement is that you should keep smiling, and not only during the interview but also outside of the interview room, because you never know when you are being evaluated. In one of my interviews, before the interview, I met a panelist in the washroom, and I was so happy to have a conversation over there, not knowing that she is the panelist. So when we happened to interact during the interview, the same level of confidence got reflected because I was smiling outside as well as inside the interview room. So make sure that you always keep smiling, that reflects confidence. The second point is to carry just one piece of file with you. Sometimes we carry keys, mobile phone, files, certificates, all of it together, and it just clumses up everything and does not look very good on our part. Keep your bag outside of the interview room. Put your mobile phone on silent mode to avoid any distractions. The third point is to walk and talk non-verbally. What that means is when you enter an interview room, you are going to be walking to your interview seat, and the interviewers will be looking at you at that point of time. If you're looking at the floor, it reflects lack of interest or lack of confidence. Just look at them and smile. That reflects interest non-verbally. That reflects confidence level. So that's the third point. Fourth point is to make sure that you greet the interviewers before you get seated by saying good morning, sir, good morning, ma'am. Anything can do. And the other thing is to shake their hands if they're not seated far away from you. So during my IIM interviews, I saw that the panelists were seated too far away from me and there was a long table in between. So I refrained from shaking their hands. But if that's not the case, then you can surely go ahead and do that. That also reflects confidence. The fifth point is to make sure that your back is straight and it's touching the back of the chair while your feet should be on the ground, touching the ground. Now, this shows that you are confident and at ease, but you should slightly bend towards the interviewers in front, and you should make sure that you're not slouching. Slightly bending towards the interviewer shows interest in the conversation and does not show ego, while if your back is entirely straight, that would also seem very uncomfortable. Another point for people who are shorter in height is to sit towards the front of the chair while touching your feet on the ground but not touching the back of the chair. You can also be seated very firmly and bend slightly towards the interviewers. The sixth point is to make sure that you carry the file but you don't put it on the table. Anything that is on the table is the territory of the interviewers. So don't keep your hands on the table. Don't keep the file on the table. While you are seated, put the file on your thighs. That's the territory that belongs to you. The table is off the limits. The next point is regarding making use of your hands while expressing something. A lot of people use hand movements while they are talking and they wonder if that's acceptable. It's perfectly acceptable to be expressive with the use of your hands, but make sure that that's not too much and it's not distractful for the interviewers. Another thing you need to keep care of while using your hands is to not point towards the interviewers. At any point of time, don't use a finger while pointing towards any of the interviewers. Another thing while you are seated is to make sure that you don't cross your arms or your legs. That sounds or looks as if you are not interested in the conversation at all. Another important point is to not play with your accessories. Sometimes when we are handling keys, which I recommend you not to, or we are wearing a watch or we are wearing earrings, we end up using our hands to touch them while we are feeling distracted or low in confidence, and that eases our stress levels. But that looks very bad on your part, and the interviewers might in turn be distracted by that. So don't touch your accessories at all. Another point is to nod your head while you're talking to the interviewer to make sure that you are conforming to what they are saying, and that also shows interest in the interview. You should also maintain your eye contact with the interviewers, that reflects confidence level, and you should look at all the interviewers one by one while in the conversation. Even while the question is being asked by one interviewer, while answering, you should be looking at all the interviewers, spending a few seconds at each person. The final point is to make sure that your last words leave an impression on the interviewers. When the interviewers say that that's going to be all, thank you for your time, sometimes a lot of thoughts come in our mind. For example, whether my interview went well or not, what should be the result, all these things will be going in your mind. But you have to maintain your composure, thank them for their time, and ask them if they would want you to send the next candidate in. That shows that irrespective of how your interview went, you were extremely confident. So make sure you choose your last words very carefully. Okay, so now we have discussed about the offline interviews, but it may so happen that your interviews take place online. So then a couple of things will change in that case. So we are going to discuss about the points that you need to take care of with respect to your body language. The first is the greeting. Earlier, you used to walk towards an interviewer while you were entering the room, but here you'll be seated on a chair in front of a camera, and you won't know immediately when the interview starts. So make sure that you don't put up a blank face before the interview begins. Make sure that you have a smiling face or a comfortable face so that you don't get stressed in the very beginning of the interview. Another thing is an icebreaker. So earlier, when you used to walk into the room, there used to be some time while the interviewers used to spend on asking about your hometown, about your hobbies, but now it's not going to be the case. And generally, the question that gets asked during such a situation is, how are the cases in your city, or how is the situation at your end? I think it's a great opportunity for you to be prepared with that answer, and also to ask the interviewers in return how they are doing, how is the situation at their end, and how is the current batch coping with the rise in cases. Is everything okay on the campus? So these are a couple of icebreakers that you can use. Another thing is regarding the facial expressions. Generally, during an offline setting, you would be seated a couple of feet away from the interviewers, but here you are going to be facing the screen. And in order to show vivid, clear expressions, what I would say is to make sure that you are looking at the camera rather than looking at the screen. That just maintains eye contact. So this might seem very weird, but I'll show you an example to illustrate how this is when you're looking at the camera versus when you're looking at the screen. So even though you might not be able to see their expressions, but it's important to show your expressions carefully. The next point is important for those who wear spectacles. Either you wear spectacles with anti-reflection glasses, or if the eyesight number is not too much, then you avoid wearing spectacles or use contact lenses. This is because during an interview, there might be a glare from the screen that might reflect in the spectacles and distract the interviewers. So we'll just give you an example. This is a personal choice, but this is what I would recommend. Another thing is regarding the hairstyle, especially for female candidates. If your hair are coming in the way of your eyesight, that's not a good idea. You should put your hair behind your ears or tie them up in a ponytail so as to avoid touching your hair again and again, especially for someone who has wavy, frizzy, or fringy hair. The next point is for documents. Earlier, you used to bring a file to the interview room to show your documents to the interviewers. Now, that's not going to be the case. You are going to be asked to send your documents earlier before the interview starts. Now, once you do that, you won't have the opportunity to showcase something that comes up during the interview. For example, if there's a talk about your internships and you just want to showcase something you did, you won't be able to do that. Hence, if there's any document, and when I say any document, I mean just one or two documents that you would really want to show to the interviewers, but you could not send them before the interview, put them on a Google Drive and create a bit link, which means a shorter version of the longer link, so that you can share a link with them through the interview chat and ask them to open it up. The nodding point remains true here as well, so keep nodding during the interview to show interest and that you understand their question. Another point is regarding listening and speaking, because in this interview setting, there is going to be some lag while the question is being asked and when you answer. So make sure you listen to to the complete question first. The interviewers may have something more to say, and you would not want a situation where both of you are talking at the same time. So listen completely first and then start speaking. The final point is regarding voice modulation. So when you are in this setting, you won't know how your voice is sounding and whether it's clear enough or not. So when you start off with the interview, when you have that icebreaker session, just simply ask them for a feedback if your voice is audible and it's clear, or it's too much for them and you would want to adjust your voice accordingly basis their feedback. So these are a couple of points that you need to take care of during an online interview. So with this, we covered both the kinds of interviews, and in case you have your interviews lined up and you would have any queries, you can put them down in the comments below. I would be replying to the video comments and all the previous video comments as well today itself. Thank you so much for watching this video.